okay, you go find Sydney, and I'm going to take her to the hospital. All right, cool. So I get this call at like 5 a.m., and I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to change the entire day around.
Yeah.
This creates a myriad of problems. One, your actors are prepared for not what is being shot. They are prepared for what they have prepared for. I am also not prepared to direct these new scenes. Like, you think after doing shorts that you can just swing into a scene and be like, well, it's fine, we'll just... You cannot do that. You cannot do that. It was bad.
Welcome to The Practical Filmmaker, an educational podcast brought to you by the Filmmaker Institute and Sunscreen Film Festival. We recorded this episode live at the festival. It is an undergraduate student film festival in Southern California dedicated to growing young filmmakers who have a passion for creating timely and relevant productions for social awareness, outreach, and uplifting creative entertainment. This is our panel featuring filmmakers of feature projects, both narrative and documentary, with a range from thriller to faith-based. You may notice a few gaps at the beginning where we screened their trailers. We'll put links to the available ones in the show notes, but for a couple of them, their teaser is either unreleased or was exclusive to the festival viewers. Still, they had some valuable insight to provide the student festival goers as those involved with or in the driver's seat of these features. I hope you also find value in what they had to say. Enjoy. Please welcome Jared Jameson of After 95 to the stage. He's a Walla Walla alum, a group of super talented students. After 95, they got together and they pitched as students against pros and won $10,000 for this project. Please quickly break down for us some things, okay? What is your project, the scope of it, and how did the concept come?
Yeah, so basically this project is really just about highlighting the story of the Marshall Islands and doing that through the lens of music and poetry created by local Marshallese artists.
It hits a little close to home because I was actually there for a year too. That was Madro, right? Yes. All right, so how did you come to be part of this process, and what is your role specifically? Because there's a team.
Yeah, so during my time at Walla Walla University, this project started at the beginning of my third year. There was a bunch of us. We've made films together for our whole university career, and a lot of those films had to do with combining music and film. And beyond that, a lot of the people on our team had connections with the Marshall Islands. They lived there for a few years, and just Walla Walla in general through the SM program has a lot of knows a lot of people in the Marshall Islands, a lot of families, and so this project made sense for us because we had a lot of deep connections with the Marshall Islands, and I feel like we had the skills to hopefully make something that could combine music and poetry and art into something that was cinematic. And so my role specifically is assistant director, cinematographer, and I guess music production for the original music that was created with the Marshallese artists.
Did it started out as a feature documentary project with a companion album, correct?
Yes.
And where are you guys at in the process right now?
So right now we're in the production phase of the film. COVID really delayed the project a ton because we were supposed to go back, but we couldn't go back just with how crazy everything was. And I think you still need like government permission to go back. And so we ended up focusing on right now, like the social media side of the film, and releasing smaller pieces of the film, like the clip that we showed, stuff like that can not let the project go stale.
Yeah.
to keep it alive in some sense.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at in the project right now, because we still want to go back, and there's other places that we also want to go. So there's a lot of trips yet to be done, but that's where we're at right now.
Because you guys went to, where was it? We
went to Arkansas.
Arkansas, okay, because a lot of, there are pockets of Marshallese.
Yeah, there's a ton of Marshallese people in Arkansas.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. Okay, and so that is that first breakdown. We're going to move on to the next teaser. Next up we have Illusory. Is that how you say it? Okay, Illusory, directed by Michelle Noland. Please welcome to the stage, Michelle Noland. She is an alum of La Sierra. She made this film as part of her thesis, and it actually got recognized by IMDb Pro and Women in Film Los Angeles for having a gender-balanced and ethnically diverse cast and crew. Please quickly break down for us what your project is. It's a feature, correct? Yes. How did the concept come to be?
So it is a feature, it's a drama. The concept came out of a random thought I had of what if you're trying to remember something but you can't, and then the idea of your life flashing before your eyes during a near-death experience came to mind, and I thought, well, what if someone tries to induce a near-death experience so they could remember something that they need to unlock? So, so that was the original idea I had, and then my brother, my husband, and I all worked on the screenplay, and then this is what you see here.
Wow. Okay, so, all right, where are you in the process?
So the film is complete, and it's in film festivals right now. So.
Okay, nice. We are going to the next one. Next up is All the Wrong Ingredients, directed by Nicholas Livanos. Please welcome Nick Livanos to the stage. This film was made in conjunction with Southern School of Visual Art and Design. It is his second directorial debut, yes, for a narrative feature. Yes. His first being Belly of the Whale, that premiered in 2018, showed at Sunscreen in 2019. Nicholas Livanos. Please quickly break down for us what is your project, what the scope and everything, and how did this concept come to be?
Yeah, so it's another feature film. It is about a driven young chef who gets this chance to reinvent the desserts at this posh restaurant, but he finds out quickly that if he's going to have any chance of success, he's going to have to sort of partner with his imaginary frenemy, sort of friend, not really, and some hijinks ensue. It's sort of a buddy comedy thing, but it's really about identity. And it was actually bizarrely inspired by a sermon that I listened to that you would never know that from watching it. But it was inspired by a sermon where this pastor talked about how we form our identities and how we want to do that for ourselves. And that means that if you want to make your identity yourself, sometimes that means like people try to achieve their identity. They try to like win and accomplish their identity. And if they don't do it, then it's like, well, who are you? And instead, it's maybe a better sort of psychological, it's a very spiritual idea to sort of embrace those identities. And you have maybe many parts of you that are more given as a gift. And those are largely relational things, right? Like everybody here is a son or a daughter, and that was just sort of given to you. Some of you are a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that's sort of a gift that's given, right? And I'm a husband, and that's great. I'm a dad now, and that's great. And I think all those things are sort of like given parts of your identity. I think the best one of those is probably being a child of God. Some people in this room can resonate with.
So how did you come to be part of this project, and what's your role?
So I am the film program coordinator at Southern, and what we're trying to do over there, bless our hearts, is try to make a feature happen every 4 years so that every student who ever comes through the school can have a chance to participate in one if they really want to. It's not required, but they can sort of jump on the Southern sort of bandwagon and do something over the summertime. Last summer was 4 years since we produced Belly of the Whale. So I was like, well, it's now or never with that dream. And so I was like, I better make something happen.
And where are you in the process?
We are tail end of post-production. So it's been a very long day, but I'm pretty sure that it was just last night I was listening and sort of trying to finalize most of the last of the music. So music is getting finished up, sound design is getting finished up, the sound mixing is happening, the color grade is almost done. It's all these things that are like almost done. It's very frustrating, actually. I'm building a house right now, and it's all the same things. Everything's almost done. I really would like to move in to my movie, but I gotta wait a little bit.
Gotcha. Nice. And last up is Sun Moon, directed by Sydney Tooley. All right. Please welcome Sydney Tooley to the stage. She is an alum of Lipscomb University and Southern. Sun Moon is her directorial debut and fully funded feature of Sony's Affirm Films. You may notice that it's a coverage reel and not a trailer because Sydney is quite literally a week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks fresh off of wrapping principal photography in Taiwan. And she brought this exclusive coverage reel for us. By the way, fun fact, that last church, that last shot, the church, my dad designed that church.
You're kidding. That's crazy.
It's super random. So my parents were they were missionaries in Taiwan for 6 years, and they got me as a souvenir. But yeah, he is the designer. Random. Okay, but please quickly break down for us what is your project and how did the concept come to be?
Okay, so Sun Moon is a feature film about a woman who gets left at the altar and decides that God is out to get her, and so decides to go and teach in Taiwan and ultimately finds God in Taiwan and potentially love and all these things. It's beautiful. It's loosely based on my time in Taiwan. I was not left at the altar. I'm going to say that right now. So all the exciting parts of the movie are not my life. A lot of what we're seeing here, the scooter she's on, the church, the campus, all of that is where I lived. That is my personal vehicle that I own that is still there. And
Your parents are still over there, right?
my parents are still there.
Yeah,
They
so-
have their citizenship now. They love it. They're never leaving. And so that's super exciting.
And how you came to be part of this project.
I'm the writer-director of this movie. I was doing this as my master's thesis at Lipscomb. We were starting to kind of push this thing, and then COVID hit, and we were like, oh, crap, well, that's great. And then Sony was taking pitches for a new platform that they're creating, and we were like, why not? Let's go ahead and pitch it. And we pitched it, and like it was a kind of a whirlwind. Very quickly, they picked it up, and they were like, okay, we're gonna fund this thing. And I was like, okay, cool, we're doing it. So it's been a journey.
Where are you in the process?
Currently, we start post on Monday. Post-production's still being figured out. But we just wrapped literally 2 weeks ago. And so post is moving very quickly now, hopefully. So when I get back, I land and immediately go into post.
It's crazy. Okay, so you did 2 phases of production, right? Because you did some shooting in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
When was that?
Ooh, so we had our first week of production in July, end of July. We couldn't get permits to get into Taiwan, so we sat for 7 months before we could get into Taiwan, and then they were suddenly like, and you're going to Taiwan today? And I was like, oh, I have 2 weeks to go to Taiwan now. So you just kind of, you sit and hope, pray that it's gonna happen, and you don't believe it's gonna happen, and then it happens, and you're like, oh, I'm leaving. Now, okay, great.
Oh my gosh. So now that I've got you all up here, I would like to hear how you either fundraised or came about funding for your projects. A lot of first-time projects here.
The biggest thing that kicked off the project was a collab event, like you mentioned, that happened where we got second place, and that was $10,000. That got the project on its feet. And then after that, to keep it going, that really just got us like to the Marshall Islands. That was as much, because the ticket cost like $2,000 a person. So, and then after that, a lot of it has been other grants from other foundations, a foundation called Living Islands, other like private investors, and then a lot of like personal team donations as well as, hey, I worked on a project, here's some cash. So
you guys kind of like crowdsource within yourself?
yes, crowdsourced within ourselves and pitched it to.
Okay, so like you do like commercial work or,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there was some commercial work, put it back into the film.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
Okay.
So.
Is there an estimate, like a range of like, I mean, are we talking like 10, 20, 40, 60, 100? Is there any kind of range?
Oh, that we've raised?
Well, that has been put into the project thus far.
With all the things that I've talked about,
Yeah.
about $50,000.
Okay. All right. Nice. All right. Michelle?
For me, it was crowdfunded. We used Indiegogo, and a lot of it was just word of mouth and talking to people that I actually knew, because people that you don't know, like they're like, why should I even donate to this? So yeah, it was just like really like targeting people that I knew who actually had money to give, and the whole budget was in the end $12,000. So
A feature?
yes. And I used a lot of resources for people that I knew. So yeah, it was 12,000, and about 7,000 of that was from crowdfunding, and the rest of it was just me saving up paychecks and paying for it myself. So
Wow. And Nick?
Before I say anything else, I'm going to comment that for $12,000, Michelle, your movie looks amazing.
I know,
so
right?
good.
Right. It looks so
Good job.
good.
thank you.
Well done. In visual art and design, a certain chunk of money gets put away every year, and usually, like in like institutional budgets, or like people who work at institutions, there are only a few of us here, will be like, if you don't spend it, it goes away. Ha ha ha! But at some point in the past, it was negotiated that like this could sort of go into the bank and stay there, and then another sum, and then another
It'll
sum.
roll
So
over.
after several years, there might actually be enough to make something with.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like wait until there was enough in the bank, and then I go and pitch and say like, here's what I'd like to see happen, and it's been a while since we did the last one, so I'd love to make something go down. And I know I'm not trying to be cagey about exact amounts. I'm just not sure I'm allowed to say.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say what I think I'm allowed to say. Belly of the Whale was a movie made for $50,000. That was the last feature 4 years ago. And this movie cost more than that.
Yeah. Got it.
To put it in some perspective, though, like I feel like SAG modified low budget is like $625K or $650K, something like that, and it's embarrassingly less than that. So it's somewhere in there between.
Wait, SAG. Sorry, say that part again.
The SAG modified low budget, like if you want to use SAG actors, like Michelle was able to do, the modified low budget, like where you can pay them just about as little as you can pay them.
Yeah.
Is like 625 or 650. I don't.
600.
Right around there.
Okay.
600.
Yeah. 650,000. No.
625.
Yeah. I thought you were saying 6, like 6,000.
No, and if your budget for your movie is more than that, then you're obligated to pay your SAG actors a next tier rate.
Yep.
Right. So it's like a lot of people sort of target that range, and our movie was like embarrassingly less than that amount.
Considerably less.
More
than
than 50,000.
Okay. All right. And Sydney.
It feels like you were in the right place at the right time, but my mentor at the time, and now the producer of the film, knew someone at Sony, knew they were taking pitches. He went into the pitch.
Steve, right?
Yeah, Steve went into the pitch. Steve Taylor.
Steve Taylor,
Yes.
who did Blue Like Jazz, I believe. Yep.
Yes. He went into this pitch and was like, don't hope for it, and then came back to me and was like, well, we're making this movie. So I was attached without having to pitch, and I actually didn't meet the execs until we were in the table read, which is terrifying because you're like, oh gosh, do they even like this movie? I don't know. Our budget was $1.2 million, which seems like a lot until you have quarantine hotels and you're traveling to Taiwan and all
you're
of
paying
COVID's fun stuff. Yes.
Yeah. You're paying your crew as well.
We're paying our crew, and we have a SAG cast, so there's money disappears.
Okay. Yeah. No, I got you. So from all of what you guys were talking about, I think we heard from you, Jared, like what your biggest spend was. That was like
Travel, basically. Yeah,
100%. And then Michelle, what was your biggest spend?
Just paying for people in post-production, really.
Yeah.
Like
finishing funds, huh?
music composition, all
Yep.
that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Nick?
I don't know. I'm going to say something that is, I'm really thankful that I get to be naive about the dollars on this movie. I was so well supported by the producers on this movie that I have no idea where the money went. I just know we spent it. Thank you so much to the producers of All the Wrong Ingredients. They took that one right off my back. Sometimes they were like, do you want this thing? It'll cost more. I'm like, will that be a problem? They were like, well, maybe not. I was like, then I want it. And that's incredibly how I was able to operate. So thank you, producers.
Oh, yeah. Full disclosure, I was one of the producers on that. We also had Nathan and Michael Moyer and Nathan DeWild. So I could actually speak to that and probably say talent. Michael, are you shaking your head? All right. Yeah, actually, I could believe that too. It was talent and catering.
Either food or catering, which I feel like I feel comfortable with that because those are literally those. When I'm telling students like what you should spend money on, it's like you got to keep those people happy, feed them well. That's thing number one, and then thing number two, if you can spend money at all, if you have the money in your tiny budget, is like get some good people in front of the camera. It makes all the difference. Actors right after food.
Yep, absolutely.
And then music, in my opinion, but
yes. And then Sydney, your biggest spend.
I don't know where it went either, which is great. It's a nice feeling. It is, well, sort of. Sometimes it's a nice feeling. But I'm gonna guess probably like just going to Taiwan, just getting everybody there, going through 2 weeks of quarantine in a hotel, food that comes with that, just sitting for a while. So I'm guessing staying alive in the hotel probably.
Nice. So, okay, I have a couple of individual type questions. Both of you two, you guys, and maybe Sydney as well, but you guys transitioned from student to professional in the middle of your project. Are you graduated, Sydney?
Yes, I was in the project and graduated.
So you were in the project and you graduated. So how did that transition impact your project?
I think for me, I don't know if I can say that, but it's almost like burnout. It's almost like when you're in school. This was my senior project, so this was like I was spending, all my time on it. I was focused on it. And then after I graduated, I realized I had to, like, make money to survive. And I couldn't just, like, make films because I wanted to make films. And so after that, I realized that, like, I needed to make money. I didn't have as much time to do this. And then you have this project, and this is a big team project. There's other people, and a lot of us are in that same stage of graduating. Yep. And then you realize, like, you don't have the time to do things, and so then the project, you don't get to focus on it as much as you want. And then it kind of, like I said, you don't want a project to go stale, especially something like this when COVID happens, and then it's sitting there, and you're slowly working on things. You're like, what should we do? Do we do nothing? Do we plan for the next trip whenever that happens? Or do we just start making smaller content that we can kind of build in more of a social media sense to try and build some audience in that way? So just, I guess basically what I'm saying is time and passion after that. Because when you're in school, it's all you're working on, and then you have a ton of other things you're trying to work on, and it's easy to lose focus and passion and excitement about a project that can take long. So, yeah.
Interesting. Michelle?
For me, same thing. I had to get a job after graduation, so I had tons of student loans I needed to pay off. I had to work, and it sort of worked out better because I was trying to find people that I knew to do a lot of the post-production, but I ended up paying for professionals to do it, which I think it turned out a lot better that way. It's interesting just trying to find the time to work on it. Like, I was working at my full-time job, and then at night I was working on editing this film. And so it just took so much time, and I was at a point of burnout a few times, and then COVID happened, and then I'm like, oh, great. So it was just really intense, just trying to, like, push and motivate myself. Like, I have to finish this film. I put too much money into it. People put so much effort into it, and they keep asking, hey, when's the film gonna be done? I'm like, oh, I'm trying to get to it. Just give me some time. So, like, I had to just keep pushing myself mentally. Like, I need to finish this. I need to finish this. Because without the school deadlines, it's like, oh, you can do whenever. Like, it's up to you. It's your choice. But then it'll never get done. So I had to, like, give myself personal deadlines.
No, that's definitely a thing for an artist, especially if deadlines are arbitrary. Making a deadline and, like, forcing yourself to stick with it, even if you end up pushing it again. It's tough.
I was freelancing through my master's program, so I was already, you're already, like, struggling through, like, trying to get those jobs and get and stay floating while you're trying to do your master's, while you're trying to also write a feature and get it done. So I spent...
so this was your master's thesis.
This was my master's thesis that started about a year in about. Yeah. And so I would write in the morning, and then I would go to my gigs at night, and I was line producing a football show while trying to do this, so working 16-hour days and writing and, like, trying to get it done. So it's
no.
So, but I think it's a weird. I'm in, like, a weird transition period now, because where you get paid to direct your movie, and you're like, that's cool. How do I get paid to do my next movie? So it's weird sitting on the edge of it, being like, well, I don't know what to do next. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a weird period of time now where it's like, do I use that money to try to get that next one going? Do I work and try to get that next one going? And you want to keep the momentum, but it's like a weird, I'll let you know how it goes when I figure it out.
We are actually doing a series with Sydney that has been following her process. So we interviewed her right after principal photography in Nashville. We're going to be following up and seeing all of the fun, grimy details that come shaking out of Taiwan. So, Nick, this is your second feature. I would like to know what's the biggest difference? Like, what's something that you learned from the first that you implemented and saw change?
Well, I can tell you, I didn't get paid to do the second one either. That's a nice feature if you're a feature. Looking forward to that one day. Sounds cool. First one was smaller in scope. We pushed the boundaries on this next one. There's some obvious differences like that. It's a little bit bigger. It's a little more complicated. I think the biggest differences are me reacting to the pain points of the first one. So in the first one, it was a smash and grab job, man, just way too fast. I sometimes tell people, like, I wrote the first draft of that Belly of the Whale script in 4 days. And then they're like, wow. And I'm like, no, that does not mean it was good. doesn't mean it's any good now. You know, like it's just a thing that happened because it had to. And then to sort of like almost to compensate, it was like post-production just went so long. Mm-hmm. And in post, I started to feel really sort of lost and lonely in it, and like who's gonna finish this movie? It's just me alone in the dark, trying to get this thing done. I think and maybe everyone sort of felt like that. Every filmmaker's been like, and maybe it always does come down to just one person alone in a dark room hitting render for the last time. final underscore this one MOV. But anyway, and that was actually genuinely traumatic. I mean, it's fine to joke about it now, but I actually went to therapy because it was very hard, and sort of like wrestled with like, what did that mean, and like, do I want to do this again? And immediately after, I was like, maybe I scratched that itch, and I don't need to. But then within like a year, I was like, nah, I got some more ideas. And so as we entered into this next one, I think I actually learned a lesson here at Sunscreen a number of years ago. There's an animation from some students. It was this little sort of like First Nations, like Canadian or Alaskan sort of like tribal thing with an Eskimo sort of igloo. It was very cute. But they went through a process where like the team sort of like collapsed and they rebuilt the animation like in half the time that they had originally. Does anyone remember this thing? It's called Isla. A couple people. Anyway, it's really great, but I was like, how in the world did you get your team to rally, right? Like when the team fell apart and you felt alone, how did you get the team to rally? Casey Layson, who is now in her master's at USC, told me like she just kind of had like a very serious conversation where she did, like, maybe it was dramatic, she like held the hands of the people and looked deeply into their eyes and said, I need you to walk through the fire with me, to go to the ends of the battlefield with me, so that we are two people alone in the dark, pressing render when it's finally done. And I know it's really dramatic, but honestly, like literally doing that is something I've started doing. But the message there for me was like, it's not wrong to ask for what you need as a professional in order to succeed professionally. And so I always start every project with like a big like crew meeting, like, all right, let's come together and here's what I think about this movie and here's why we're doing this as far as I'm concerned, and like, let's all just get on the same page. And part of that for this one was me saying like, here's what I need to the crew. And I just am like endlessly thankful because I feel like the whole crew just showed up. It was like they all were like, okay. And then they just did those things and more. And I got to not know how or why money got spent and sort of relax and sort of do specific directing jobs and things like that. And that was huge. So I think like take the pain point of your first one or any project you have and sort of like really actively apply it to the next one. That's what I tried to do.
Yeah, so one thing that sets your experience apart from some of the others is that you're a father. You had mentioned before that you're a dad. And something that we like to highlight, or at least just talk about, have a conversation about on The Practical Filmmaker, is the balancing act. This can be a pretty tough industry on families, on relationships. I'm just wondering what you make of it.
Yeah. Man, the rings that strikes a lot of chords. I remember I have been in this room at Sunscreen and asked that question in a Q&A of a very big professional.
I think I remember sitting next to you.
I'm not going to name who it was because I feel like I was basically like, what about lifestyle and like, you know, holistic happiness and stuff? And he kind of laughed at me and then said he had been married like 19 times or something. And
oh no.
And I was like, okay, so it's a joke to you and you don't care? I was like, I don't know what to take out of that, which is why I'm not naming who it was. But it's not a joke to me. I love my wife. I love my kids. I want to be with them way more than I want to make any movie ever again. If it was a choice, it's not a choice. It's easy. Yeah, that's tricky. My son was a baby when we made Belly of the Whale. They were 4 and 2 when we did this movie last summer. And I remember like the day that I went to have that crew meeting, I'm not going to cry here, but like the day we went to have that crew meeting and sort of say like, here's what's up, the day before we started shooting. I'm about to walk out the door and like I'm missing bedtime with my kids. My wife's going to do everything, which she's going to do a bunch of through the rest of the next 4 weeks of production. I hug my kids goodbye for 4 weeks. And I thought, you know, we're pretty cool with it. We prepped them. They knew what was going on. But both of them were like, Papa, I don't want you to make the movie. And I was like, I'm gonna lose it here, kids.
Yeah.
Please just hug me and let me go. And I walked out of my house and I left them behind and I went to the crew. And so I remember looking at them being like, wasn't part of the prepared speech, but I was like, what we are doing must be worth it. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully I was doing something that was really close to my heart, right? It's a buddy comedy. I get that, but it's also there's some thematic stuff that there's really meaningful to me. And I think in some ways man, life's too short to not make the stuff that you really, really love. Who knows if you get to make another one? Make the one you love, make it for the ones you love, maybe. And balancing that thing a lot for us had to do with any moment I could, I protected, spent with them. I got my son to set once or twice. We almost put him in the movie, and then we're like, he can't do it. He's no good. He's never going to be an actor. No talent there, no offense, but. And really sort of protecting our schedule was I scheduled family vacation immediately after. And there were moments where we were like, we really could use some of those days. And I was like, I'm sorry, those days are not available. And so it was kind of on me to be like, I will finish making the movie in the time that we agreed we would make the movie.
Yeah. So you guys were working with, you worked with student crew, students, you guys were students. Sydney, one of your experiences is you worked with an international crew. Let's talk about that for a second. Was there a language barrier?
There was a language barrier, but luckily, because I'd lived in Taiwan, I knew it fairly well. I know the culture fairly well, and Taiwanese culture is really interesting working with them because everything that goes wrong, they feel like it's their fault and they can't mess up and it's going to be really bad. And so you have to constantly, if you tell them, I had a boom op, we love her, she's amazing. And there was just one scene where the boom just kept getting, and I'm like, take the boom out, I don't need sound, whatever. And she was like, I'm really sorry. And I was like, no, you're the best boom op ever. No, it's fine. So it's really interesting working interculturally because we had 3 teams who never worked together. We have 3 languages.
3 languages?
With 3 languages. We had Mandarin, traditional Taiwanese, and English. So all of these languages are in play, which is great because I don't understand the problems that happen with the Taiwanese crew. So there were no problems to me. But and then you have also 3 cultures. So you have American, you have Taiwanese American, which is a whole other thing, and then Taiwanese. So you're trying to manage all of these cultures and languages and people that are just, and how do they feel today? It's a lot. So I had an assistant director who would speak for me. I would say the direction and I'd be like, please translate, because the students we have really don't speak English. My crew speaks English fairly well, and they'll also tell you, we understand. I say, do you understand? They say, yes, I understand. And then they don't do what you say. Because they don't want to tell you that they don't understand. And I'm like, I don't care. Just tell me so I can fix the problem.
A lot about saving face.
Yeah, right. It's a lot about saving face. So I would give a direction, and then I'd be like, please translate. And he would translate, and then we would go on. And that worked really well. It was less challenging than I thought it would be, because I do understand the culture. And our team was amazing in Taiwan. They were on it. The things that, and we did have a good producer and AD who were really rallying them all the time. It's really fun working interculturally, and I really enjoy it. And it didn't really slow us down. I thought it was going to slow us down a lot, having I have to say something, then he has to say something, and then we have to say it again. And there were days where we were like, but but as we went, the flow started happening, and they're really fun to work with because you learn about their culture too while you're working, and they learn about you. And it was funny because we came in being like, oh my gosh, the Taiwanese team's gonna be so on top of it and whatever. And they came in with we've never worked with an American crew before. And we found out about a weekend that they were like, oh, you guys are cool. We were like, yes, you guys are also cool. So it was funny being they're just human beings. And we are also, everybody is just looking for approval. And that was a really big takeaway, that everyone coming into the room is looking to have your approval, even if they're not saying it.
Is any of your actual film in Taiwanese or Mandarin?
There is a lot of Mandarin, but as you're watching the film, there is no subtitles. This movie was made for Taiwan. This is a love letter to Taiwan. All of the Mandarin is for them. So, and we as the audience should stand with our American main and be as lost as she is. As she learns words, we get subtitles. But this movie was made for them, and it is specifically like targeting like just my like gratitude and like love for that country.
I do have to just bring attention to the awesome fact that every single one of these projects has diversity in either its subject or its cast. I think that's worth celebrating. I think that's really cool. But anyway. We're going to move on to some gear and gadgets. And something that you couldn't live without during the making of your project, your good old reliable.
A lot of the stuff that you guys saw was like drone shots. We had a Mavic, and we brought 3 batteries. Someone ended up running over 2 of those batteries, destroying them. So for most of the trip while we were there, we had 1 drone battery. And if you know how long one drone, it's like 15 minutes, maybe a little more than that.
Oh, no.
So when you're going out to an outer island and you're trying to film stuff and you have 1 battery for like 3 days, you have to be very, very thoughtful with how you use that battery. But anyways, I guess that's something you don't want to have to live without, but sometimes you do have to live without.
All right. Well, what was something that maybe revolutionized your gear? Something that revolutionized.
Waterproof bags.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are super handy, especially when you're in the Pacific and like the air is just so salty.
Oh, salty, yeah.
And we had issues. Some of our like the salt would get into the buttons and they'd corrode, and you couldn't. One of our cameras, you couldn't like twist the like you could, but it was like you had to like use your hand to like twist it. And just stuff like that. So having like waterproof bags and trying to keep it as dry as possible, and I like dry packets and stuff. You just have to do your best. So yeah, waterproof bags.
Hey, Michelle.
My dad's white van. It was like the creepy van, like you try to like stay away from, but we ended up using it in the movie as the vehicle. Like at that last shot where she's like screaming, she's trapped in that white van. So that was pretty much, I mean, from my perspective, I'm sure crew like had their own idea of like what was most important, but
but that works.
That it was big enough to fit tons of equipment, so it was like doubling in its role. So it was super helpful for us.
Nice. And I've never gotten that answer before. And your favorite gear that has revolutionized your new piece of gear that might have revolutionized your experience.
I mean, just Adobe Suite is pretty sweet, I would say.
What did you guys shoot on?
We shot on Canon, actually.
Okay,
So we were going to use a Red, but that was unavailable, so we had to use the equipment that was available from La Sierra University.
And Nick, reliable.
I'm old reliable. I'll match it. I gotta give you a couple things really quickly try to answer these questions.
Yeah.
I'm not really a gear guy.
Yeah.
But the old reliable for me is like there are directors who are like they don't even know what's happening with the camera, and they're just like watching the actors, and they're like, there, it happened, the magic. I'm sure you did the right thing, camera guy. And they move on, and I am not that guy. Like I'm like, well, that's cool and all, but what happened for the movie? What do we get for the movie? I want to see it.
Yeah.
And so having a monitor like just available to me all the time was very, very valuable, and I think like that's my standby. Like I want to see what's happening, even if it's a small guy that I take around. And sometimes I prefer the small, so that it's just not. I actually don't really like a video village with a bunch of other people sort of hovering. It's just like this is fun. I'll tell you if it's good. It's me being picky, but and the thing that sort of goes along with that is like Artemis Viewfinder is like a $30 app. $30 well spent, friends.
Wow.
Artemis Viewfinder. You can choose exactly which lenses you are working with. You can choose the exact sensor and camera that you're using, and it will show you a focal length on your camera, on your phone, that is an exact replica of what you're going to get with that camera and that lens set, and it is invaluable for pre-visualization. And I like to sort of like figure out like how are we telling the story with the camera. I like the acting stuff too. I like it all. The newest thing that's sort of revolutionary to me is we shot all this stuff on like Airy Raw, which is like, ooh, yeah, like a pro.
And you shot on?
Arri Alexa SXT is the specific camera.
All right, yep.
And so we shot everything Airy Raw, and, knock yourself out if you want to do that, but It shoots ProRes too, and it works real nice when you do, folks. So if you're trying to move a little bit quicker, I recommend ProRes, folks.
Yeah.
But we shot in ARRI RAW anyway, and so I've learned some things about that in post-production. And what I've generally learned is like how the ACE's workflow really sort of pans out as it sort of like as it corresponds to visual effects and sort of working with a separate visual effects artist team and your colorist, and sort of how that handoff needs to go so that everybody can sort of play nice. And when they render out visual effects, which you cannot do in ARRI RAW, the thing that the colorist is then getting still looks like it matches everything.
For those not in post, ACEs.
ACES is like the Academy's sort of like color science sort of spec. It's a standardization to sort of hopefully create some of this unity in these processes on purpose. Make it easier to do those things that I was just talking about. Handoffs specifically between VFX and color.
And they have a specific ACEs workflow.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's complicated, but I kind of get it now.
Yes. Sydney, old reliable.
I'll back up Artemis on that one.
Yeah.
Artemis is great. I think my immediate response is my script that I carry around, but that's not like your thing. I think Comtex. I had never really had the privilege of using Comtex for myself, and I am the person who's like, I trust the camera. Let me see what they're doing right there. Okay, cool. And also, you can hear how an actor feels if you leave it on because they talk to each other with their mics on, which is very helpful because then I can troubleshoot before it comes to set. And I'm like, oh, there it is. And so that's nice. I'd have to say, like, I don't know. We shot on red. I'm not a gear person, but my immediate response was trash bags because we also were dealing with a lot of rain and water, and you forget that the simplest tool is often the most effective, which would be trash bags because it rained on us a lot, and on the days we had to be outside. And don't forget, simple sometimes is better.
Well, I mean, that kind of actually leads into the next question because one of my favorites on the podcast is what I ask when something went wrong. So, Jared, I mean, I know that you've already kind of highlighted something that went wrong, but if you can dig up another.
This is more personal than film-wise, but I think it kind of goes into like being healthy and protecting yourself against the elements. But we were going on a trip to an outer island. It was like a 24-hour boat ride. And, I was really enjoying the sun and the waves, and I ended up like taking my shirt off, just like laying on the deck, and I fell asleep. And I woke up with like the worst burn of my life.
The Marshall Islands are like right on the equator, by the way.
And then we get to the outer islands, and I'm just like, it was like there's like nothing out there, and I was like trying to say, and we had to like walk the next day, and it was like we had to carry equipment, and I just had this, and I was like trying to like wear all this clothing to cover myself. But then it's so hot too. It was like you have to make sure to take care of yourself, be smart, take breaks, drink water, and wear sunscreen.
Wear sunscreen. Michelle.
For me, it was, I don't even know if my crew knew this happened, but one of the characters of the cast, he like dropped out at the last minute. We were in the middle of filming. It was like a 2-week shoot.
Wait, had he already shot?
No, not yet.
Okay, all
so
right.
like it was like the day before we were gonna start, and then he's like, "Oh, something came up. I can't make it." I'm like, "No!" So I was trying to go because I got my characters from Backstage, so I was using that to find actors.
Backstage is casting.
Yes, for
got it.
casting. I was like frantically searching. We were having like long shoot days, and then at the end of the day, I'm like trying to search through Backstage, and everybody that I'm asking, like, "Oh, I'm not available," or like, "This doesn't work for me, it's too soon," or whatever. I was thinking, okay, the actors must know other actors, like they must do workshops and stuff. So I was asking around, and the lead actress, Latoya Ebony, she knew somebody from a workshop she was doing in LA. And so I was like, can you contact him for me or give me his contacts? 'Cause like I just need somebody to fill this role. And then like the day before we were shooting, he confirmed that he was available. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Thank you, God. It was so stressful because I'm like, all these things are planned. We can't reschedule this. Like, there's no way we're rescheduling any of the shoot because nobody else is going to be available after this. People are graduating. People are like leaving and stuff. So it was just like super stressful. I don't think I told anybody. It was just like me panicking by myself.
It's a good thing. Maybe that's the lesson. Stress everybody else out too. Nick.
Do I tell this story, Tanya?
Well, sure.
All right.
Sure,
Your podcast.
why not?
You can edit if you want to. We had some crazy folks maybe involved at a location, and so I got a whisper in my ear at one point when I was like, all right, we'll knock this out in the next 4 hours, no sweat. And the AD is like, I'm so sorry, you only have 20 minutes left. And then we have to be out of the location. We have to be out of the location 20 minutes. I was like,
Taillights.
okay. And there's not even time to ask like why at that point. You just know like, well, that's the truth, or else I wouldn't have been told. Let's make a movie, folks. And we stole it. Testament to the crew. They just were like, let's go get it. Let's go get it. People are like packing and wrapping out. In the meantime, the Steadicam guy's like, I'll run up the stairs. I'll go get the other shot you wanted from upstairs in the balcony. I'll go get it. And so we're like, just like, we're out. Don't look up there. Don't look up there. And then finish it off. And we bag the scene. And actually, that scene like miraculously works pretty well.
Yeah.
But the biggest pain point probably was like the hardest day of directing an actor of my life was on this movie. There was an individual who did not know their lines, and they had a lot of lines. Mm-hmm. Their lines were, in fact, some of the most important lines in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I had pre-visualized the scene with Artemis and planned to shoot the whole thing as this very, I thought I was so clever, the staging and the blocking, and like it was all going to be this one shot, and like, but not, like flashy, just sort of like little transformation here, and then and I was like, and at some point I was like working with him, like, like send him off to go, like, well, you just run lines with that other actor and you'll get him by the time. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll just run drills, and we'll like rote memorization, one line at a time. And at some point it became apparent that he didn't know them and he wasn't going to learn them. Through no fault of his own, just maybe the stress of the moment, it was bad news bears. And so I was like, I don't know, just abandon ship. What's the new plan? And I remember having a powwow with some of the leadership and figuring out like, all right, guys, here's what's going to happen. We got to find a way to maybe shoot this scene where we can edit around him as much as possible. And if he just says something that's not the line, we just keep rolling. And the other guy will just carry it. The other guy in the scene knows his lines. He'll just carry it on through. And so we have like, the guy who didn't know his lines in the middle of the take will be like, wrong line completely. One I made up myself. And then his scene partner will be like, correct line for this moment. And we just keep rolling, and we can edit it later. And so, and just like a lot of creative, like figuring out how to shoot it again. And it was pretty dramatic. There was a moment where he was sort of like rolling it back and like starting at an earlier place. I'm sorry, let me go back, and starting at an earlier place and starting at an earlier place. And I was like, okay, cut. And I took him alone into the next room. And I later found out he was afraid I was going to fire him, which, I don't know. Maybe secretly I had some feelings, but the reality was I didn't really have an option. I couldn't if I wanted to. So I was just like, hey, man, I really need you on my team. If I say start at this part, I need you to go there and trust that, like, I'm watching. I'm the the compass for whether this is working, supposedly. I'm going to tell you whether I think we have what we need, and then we'll move on, okay? But I need you on my team. And after that, followed instruction a lot more, and we even had like a crazy moment like later on where after trying to record wild lines and just reading the script, so nervous or whatever it was, he couldn't even just read the script and record the wild lines. And so like when we came back after lunch, I was like, hey man, this next scene, the lines are not as critical as that first scene. If you don't say it, whatever, say something like that. And I'll be darned if the guy didn't nail his lines over and over and over again. So I think it was largely like a stress thing, but it was like finding like what this guy needed to succeed. And I'm thankful that like there were a lot of people who sort of like came up to me that day and were like, "Wow, good job." And I was like, "Thanks, I'm trying, I'm trying." But it was very difficult.
If I remember correctly, I want to say it was somebody standing with like cue cards with like bullet points, just main bullet points. That was just like, okay, just say whatever you want, just hit these points.
Whatever you can. There's a moment we were rolling that day. There was a shot where he had to do nothing. He had to do nothing, lie still, act asleep. And here's what he did. And I just looked at everyone. I just looked at everybody else and was like, "It's just funny now. It's just funny now. I don't know where we are, what's happening, but we'll figure it out."
Sydney.
Oh, we love making movies.
We do. We love it.
I really believe that filmmakers are somewhat of masochists because we continue to come back every time.
Yep.
I think the hardest day on set, you're running it like you only have a certain amount of days in Taiwan. You have to make every single day at a certain time. And they're all very scheduled to, like, we do not have time to move any of these things. So one day we get a call at 5 a.m. that one of our actresses, who is in every single scene, like critical actress, is out because she is sick. Like really sick, like has been in the hospital all night. And we're like, oh my gosh. And my AD and my Taiwanese producer, like both walk out the door at the same time and just look at each other and are like, okay, you go find Sydney and I'm gonna take her to the hospital. All right, cool. So I get this call at like 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to change the entire day around.
Yeah.
This creates a myriad of problems. One, your actors are prepared for not what is being shot. They are prepared for what they have prepared for. I am also not prepared to direct these new scenes. Like, you think after doing shorts that you can just swing into a scene and be like, well, it's fine, we'll just... You cannot do that. You cannot do that. It was bad. So I pull the whole crew together at the beginning of the day. I'm like, here's the issue. She's super important. She's really sick. She'll be back later. But today, I really need you to stick with me. We're going to change the entire day to a completely different place. And I need y'all to just go with it. So the crew's amazing. They're just like, okay, cool. And they all go for it. In the meantime, my main actress and I are just like, okay, we're gonna be fine. This should be a real easy day right here. We don't really have that many things to do. Don't ever say it's gonna be easy. It's not. It's never easy. And you're like, okay, cool. It's just these are simple. So we get in there.
Yeah.
And it goes fine until you get to you'll hit a certain like stuck scene where you're just like, I don't know why this isn't working. Like we've prepped, we know it's just not working. We had to stop. It was on close-ups too. We had to stop a scene. It's not working. We go to lunch. We come back. We probably did like 15 takes of just her and both of us are like, why isn't it working? So finally we go away together, sit down. We have to take a minute, breathe, be like, okay, it's fine. Realize like we're attacking it wrong. Both of us are like, we're attacking the scene wrong. And so then we come back with a different form of attack. But it's just the complications of trying to be like, lighting's doing something else, location is completely different, your actors don't know what they're doing. What wardrobe were you in? You're in the wrong wardrobe, go back. Like, we're not gonna talk about wardrobe, but that was rough too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably like the day from just we get done. We get done, the AD and I are like, we lived. And we have to go again tomorrow. Oh no. But it worked out. And it's a beautiful scene. So that was the stress, yeah.
Filmmaking, like a lot of the times what's highlighted, like we have a whole entire panel of feature filmmakers, and you think you need to be a director with a script or a project in your back pocket and all of that. But if we back up, being part of the industry is so much more. It's so much more broad than just that aspect. Like not just like the roles you play, but like you have other full-time jobs. Or you do other gigs, or there's bread money. So what do you guys do right now to keep bread on the table? I'm just curious. Like besides these projects that are in front of you, what do you guys do for bread money?
Actually, I work for the Loma Linda University Church, the media team here. So yeah, that's what I do to make money. And then after work, I try and be creative as much as I can. So.
Nice.
For me, I work for the Southern California Conference. I'm an associate director for media production. I just started that job, but it's really interesting because I'm just creating a job out of nothing pretty much. So I get to be really creative with it. So that's my full-time job. I also do freelance work. Like if people have projects they want me to edit, I do that as well at home at night after I get home. And then I also host a podcast with my husband, The Musty Creative.
Yep, Musty Creative.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's making a little bit of money on
Yeah,
the side, but
nice.
that's like a weekly thing that we do.
Nice, nice.
I'm a professor. I teach film production at a university, Southern Adventist University. I think I might have said that at some point.
Got it. Yep.
Currently, this is my full-time job, but on the side, like I freelance, edit, second AD, script supervisor. I also go in and I teach classes at Lipscomb University when they need them, and I cover for teachers. So I do like basically all of that like nitty-gritty jobs that need to be done, and whatever brings in money, because freelance is hard. But
Freelance is
but also it's exciting because you don't know what's coming in next.
Yes. So now that you guys have all been involved with features, is that the direction that you want to still continue?
I do like the documentary side of making films. I honestly, I realize I love music production a lot more than I do love film, but I like music production more than I like film. So doing music as much as possible has more recently I've realized makes me happy, and so I want to really focus on that. And if that can be with film, then that's an added bonus because I did go to school for that.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like,
No.
like when you find something that you're passionate about, I mean, there are plenty of people that were part of our class. They're school counselors, they're nurses, they're what have you, and they found something else like in this world that they are really truly passionate about, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we're not gonna like crucify you for not wanting to do film. But,
I'm not.
yeah.
I don't necessarily see myself doing feature films
Yeah.
in the future, honestly. But if the opportunity arises, who knows? I'll let you know in a few years. We'll see. If I'm still in the States, but
Yeah, got it. Michelle?
I am still interested in doing features. I am leaning more towards screenplay writing, so I'm trying to hone my skills in that area because I took production in college, so I'm trying to practice more my writing. And then also just doing, like, I've been writing, like, I'm trying to write a novel right now, so that's been fun. But yeah, I'm totally for features. I just want to make stuff that I feel like has a positive impact on society.
Nice, nice.
I want to do a lot of things. I want to continue making features, but I'd like to not make one with the university in the future. Not that that's been a bad relationship.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I really, really have a burden for that to be someone else's opportunity. I've done 2 of them. I think that's maybe 1 too many, actually. I'd really like to pass the baton and get other people involved who maybe came through the school.
Mm-hmm.
I always joke when I finish a big project, maybe next I'll just write a book, because when I'm done with it, it's just done. That does sound very appealing still. And maybe the final thing that's actually a little more realistic currently is like I'm gonna go do like a writer's room retreat thing and maybe do a little bit of like a break story for an animated show.
Mm-hmm.
So, that'd be a dream come true in a lot of ways, because sometimes I think I watch more animation than I watch live action film. Maybe I got in the wrong thing. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get my little toe in the door of the animation world, maybe I never come back. We'll see.
Yeah.
I hate it, but I love it. Like, I love everything about it. There are days you wake up and you're like, why did I do this? I hate this. But then you always go to bed like, I gotta go do it tomorrow, or I have to go do it tomorrow. And as sitting in the fire of it now on the edge of post, like a day after we finished wrap, and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. And then I'm like, but when can I start writing my next one? And how am I gonna get that done? And I'm like, oh gosh. So I think for me, like, I'm really passionate about being a storyteller, and like directing is excruciatingly hard. And you have to love what you're telling every time that you do it, because you have to wake up and deal with just putting out fire after fire after fire, which is, we just love creative problem solving, I think. And but for me, I think like if I could direct features or narrative in the future, going forward, I would love to do that, because I just love telling stories and other people's stories, and being able to I just want to make stuff. I don't know.
That's a good thing.
That's the dream, right? Don't we all just want to make cool things with cool people?
Yeah.
Summary.
So now we're actually going to open it up for questions, because usually we would have listener questions right now. Yes.
For Jared, so you were mentioning music. That's something I'm also interested in.
Nice.
What do you think you would branch out towards if you were kind of still interested in film but really just wanted to do music, sort of?
I think for me, they're somewhat separate. I mean, they don't have to be. And a lot of the projects that I made in school, like I made a musical, and that was very like film and music heavy. And so it was like producing the music and writing the music, and that was really fun. And this project is also similar in theme. Beyond that, I think it's just like being like, if you want to be a filmmaker and you want to make music, then find the people that also want to make films and want to have cool music. And if not, make your own and just go for it. I'm also figuring it out, so good luck, I guess, because
Nice.
we all need it.
Good luck.
I like the answer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we do have a question. Where can we watch these projects?
Mine is currently in film festivals. It's not public yet, but if you want to get a private viewing, you can visit our Patreon page and become a patron.
Oh.
So if you go to patreon.com/mustycreative and you pledge even just $1, you can see the film, and we can set up a private viewing just for you or your friends or whatever. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I think obviously the film's not done, but I think the plan is to submit to film festivals, and more specifically like Micronesian, Pacific Islander film festivals, or film festivals that focus a lot on climate.
We're seeking distribution sort of actively now. Exactly what that'll be, it's hard to tell. We'll do the film festival thing as well. That worked out for us with Belly of the Whale. A distributor approached us because they saw Belly of the Whale at a festival that we didn't even go to, so we got to deal with them. So the low-hanging fruit is we'll just distribute with the same folks again, if nothing else. And that's just like a sort of available on DVD and like some sort of one of those little streaming services that none of us have, but if we hit it, you could watch it.
Ours is should be released sometime later this year, the beginning of next year, on Sony's platform. I'm not 100% sure what that even is, but Sony has it. So whatever they decide, yeah, it's Sony Affirm Films. They're releasing a trailer, a real one, at some point soon, which is cool. So we have distribution. I don't know where it's going. It'll do a limited release, I think, hopefully through Taiwan, and then hopefully at least on the East Coast side of things, at least near Nashville.
Okay, and we have one last one. If you could change one thing about your project, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
COVID?
Done.
I feel like I sort of rushed understanding the story fully before I was directing. I would really like to just have more time with a story and really just get deep into it before I begin directing it. That way I just have a clear understanding of each scene that I'm doing, and I know the purpose of each scene, because it did feel a little rushed during production.
Yeah, and I can go back and be more specific as well when I say COVID, because we were in the islands just as like all COVID was starting to happen, and I was hearing about like this thing that was happening, and people, were getting sick, and then the NBA shut down, and I'm out here, we're just doing our project, and then my parents called me like, you need to come home, and I was like, do I? Can I just stay a little bit? But I was actually ended up being like one of the last flights back into Canada, and we had to rush everything. We had to leave a few weeks early. So when it comes to stuff like, honestly, COVID really. Who knows if I hadn't have left? Who knows? Maybe I'd still be in the Marshall Islands. Who knows? But maybe we would have finished the project. Who knows? But
I thought about this, and I have a good answer now. I think this is interesting. Working with the composer, we found a couple really interesting scenes that our composer is sort of. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a genius. Frankly, he doesn't think of himself as a songwriter. And it was really interesting to hear, like, well, you're a musician, you write music, but it's not songs, it's score. And there's a distinct difference. And I didn't really think that much about it. I was like, he could write that, he could write the other. And we just have a few moments and sequences in the film that really feel like they were designed to have a soundtrack, to have a song. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like, well, what do we put there? Because we can't afford anything but this music you're writing. So can you write something that's pretty good? And he's pulling through for us in a big way, but it was really interesting to feel like, oh yeah, this shouldn't be score, it should be soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
This might be cliche, but I don't think I would change anything about what happened. Were things rough sometimes? Yes, but I think the journey is the journey, and embracing those lessons that are learned and learning as you go forward, and being able to say, like, I went through this was really hard, I made these mistakes, I learned from these mistakes, I won't make these mistakes again. And I think, like, if everything goes perfect, you don't learn and you can't grow. So on this particular journey, I wouldn't ask for it to change, even though there were things I didn't like or that were not pleasant and sometimes.
Yeah.
But I embrace fully that, like, from my first, I have no regrets about it, and I don't come out of projects with regrets because you're not learning anything if you're coming out like, oh, I failed in here.
Yeah. How do we find you or follow your work?
You can go follow Voices Rising on Instagram. That's a great place to find Voices Rising.
Got it.
Yeah, you can find me, Jared J. Jameson, also on Instagram.
For me, you can follow me on Instagram at Michelle B. Noland or The Musty Creative.
I'm so bad at social media. You can try following me at Nicholas Livanos on Instagram. The more apt place to follow news about the movie and stuff like that will be SVAD at Southern, the sort of visual art design Southern. Whatever.
Is it Instagram or is it
I'm an old man, Tanya, and I don't understand these newfangled social media children's things.
But it's called SVAD.
SVAD at Southern is the handle on Instagram.
You can also follow me on Instagram. It's Sid Tooley. It's SYD, the number 2 LY. You can see stills from the movie there. And also follow me at my website is www.sidtooley.com. Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Here are your panelists.
Thank you for listening to us. You're very gracious.
If you enjoyed this panel, follow us right here and on Instagram. Ask us questions and check out more episodes at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.